on the reach. I got to tell you, it's good to see you.
Well, we've never met. It's good to meet you. Yeah.
We've never met.
You're not exactly your Twitter persona in person.
I'm the best parts of it in person.
All right.
All right. So when my team said that you were interested in doing a fireside chat, I couldn't believe it. And I want to thank you for showing up because I think it's an important conversation. We've obviously been at different sides of different discussions, to put it mildly, in the past couple of years. And, but I think we're kind of aligned on the general state of play within the US regulatory regime. So, you know, Ripple's not without its share of critics. You know, folks have said, let me just kind of read some of the lines. Historically, you know, Ripple has been called a scam, a fraud, a Ponzi scheme. Your regulatory engagement strategy has been compared to a drowning victim.
I didn't see that one.
And that's just me. So.
Oh, wait, I've got some of the tweets you've deleted that we could read.
Oh, you know, here out. We were going to do Jimmy Kimmel's mean tweets, but I delete my tweets every couple of years. So, but Brad's got the goods just in case I get out of line again. But why don't we start? Look, let's start from like a level playing field. Ripple's one of the oldest, largest projects in the industry. You took a different tack from day one to focus on institutional settlement. We'll get into the SEC stuff in a minute. Let's just talk about Ripple, the project, and then we'll talk about XRP, the currency, and then we'll talk about this precedent-setting case with the SEC. But
sounds good.
Just full history. Let's take it from the top.
All right. Where do you want me to start?
Well, let's start with Ripple, the general goals of the project, the protocol, right? And
well, so XRP as the protocol, Ripple as the company building on top of the XRP ledger.
I know you're going to give the marketing language and the differentiation, but yes. Like,
well, by the way, one of my goals.
However you want to level set the initial conversation in terms of like the company, the protocol, the asset. But what is the goal of the project? Because we're going to get to why it's been handcuffed a little bit by some of the regulatory action.
So look, Chris Larsen was one of the co-founders of Ripple. From the earliest days, kind of articulated this vision around an internet of value. And the idea being that, you know, why is it so hard to move value? And there will be a time in the future that it's just like sending an email. That friction is highest going cross-border. And rather than, as many projects, particularly in the early days, we're trying to build really a parallel financial system. Let's circumvent banks, let's circumvent governments. Ripple took an approach of, let's work with the government, let's work with banks, regulated financial institutions. And look, to some degree, in the earliest days, that's one of the reasons why Ripple was controversial, is because it was taking a bit of a, you know, controversial approach to crypto. If crypto wanted down with banks and down with government, that's with whom we are working, that created controversy. But look, today, I believe that Ripple, the company, so we are effectively building enterprise blockchain-based solutions. We started with cross-border payments. We sell to banks. We sell to financial institutions. We have billions of dollars of transactions going through RippleNet, through XRP, the product we call on-demand liquidity. I think Ripple is one of the few truly scaled crypto use cases that actually is solving a problem. It's not a science experiment. It's not in a testing phase. You know, again, if anything, we're trying to throttle growth right now. The demand is outstripping really our ability to serve that demand right now. In Q2, which was obviously a tough quarter for crypto at large, was a record quarter for Ripple. We obviously care a lot about the crypto ecosystem and the value of crypto broadly, but on the other hand, we're selling an enterprise solution, and if we're not solving a problem, people aren't going to buy it.
Who are some of the other institutional players that are actually contributing to the network right now? Because if you look at data, if you look at how to actually process transactions, Ripple the company, runs a lot of the infrastructure right now.
No, we don't.
I think many people use.
No, we don't.
So let's correct that misperception. How do you break it down? And how do you?
I mean, look, facts are important, right? And
why we're here.
Well, but like, look, and I think, I know we're kind of kidding around in the mean tweets. Look, the thing that I find frustrating is people throw shit out there, and it's like, that's not even true. Let's try to start with facts. So today, of the 155 validators on the XRP ledger, Ripple runs, I think, 6 out of 155 or something. So look, there's been a long time since Ripple, the company, meaning literally early, like 2012, 2013, 2014, there's been amendments passed on the XRP ledger that Ripple, the company, opposed. We can't, it's traditional open source software. We can't control it. And I think it's, again, one of those misperceptions that like, hey, let's make sure we understand this stuff before we throw stones. Look, the other thing I'll quickly say on this, I believe, and I've very publicly said, that one of the biggest things holding back crypto at large is tribalism. I mean, Ripple has invested in over 60 companies. We've invested hundreds of millions of dollars, close to $500 million, in about 60 different companies across the crypto landscape. Some of them are involved with XRP, some of them aren't. I truly believe all boats can rise, and I think the whole industry, frankly, needs to stop taking shots at each other and try to like support each other and try to actually help people be successful. Yes, there's some projects that compete against each other, but there's a whole lot of things that I just think we should spend a lot less time attacking each other and a lot more time worrying about the external environment, which recently you have obviously supported in the SEC lawsuit.
We're going to get to that in a minute.
All right.
And but I think.
Thank you.
I'm curious to hear your take. In terms of ownership of XRP, Ripple has a disproportionately large share of the tokens. Would you agree with that?
Well, so today we own just about exactly 50%. So I kind of know where your question's going here. Like, look, even in the earliest days, you've been involved with crypto for a long time. What's the right way to do distribution?
I'm not coming at you the way that I think you think I'm about to. I'm asking, do you have a disproportionately large share? I think the answer is
we own about
50%.
Okay. It's as you know well, the vast majority of that, I don't know, call it 90% of that is in escrows. Mm-hmm. We can't control that. It's in an escrow. It unlocks once a month. We did this to kind of to eliminate the FUD that we somehow were able to control the XRP ledger. It's like, look, that's not true. But we do own roughly 50% of all the XRP. The other 50% is float out and involved with various people, various projects, what have you.
Okay, so I would call that a disproportionately large amount, not by industry standards, but in general, if you're talking about a decentralized platform. What I think has changed in the last couple of years is more teams are starting with reserves. They call them token treasuries, whatever discovered assets, protocol assets, whether they're escrowed, whether they're subject to unlock, lock schedule, whether they're distributed to the early investors under a lock schedule or not. They're starting from no decentralization because it's someone's idea or some team's idea, and then they're gradually doing it over time. And you were definitely one of the first protocols, I think, that was disproportionately owned by one company.
Yeah.
And that's led to some of our disagreements in the past. But now it also is put you in this interesting position with the SEC where the case that we are on the same side of, you can be, Ripple, the company, can play a meaningful part in helping force the issue and figure out what the definitions are and where sane US crypto policy should be.
Yep.
So I would love to just unpack the last few years of engagement with the SEC. Some of this you've spoken about, some of it I know you're going to be sensitive to, but you're going to be able to talk at a high level about this. What?
But by the way, just to touch on one thing you just said, look, basically you can ask me anything because the vast majority, it's all public. This is all public information.
If you were trying to settle, you wouldn't be such an open book.
We could talk about why we could or could not settle, but anyway. So your question is, you'll go back in time, like how did we end up here?
Yeah. So just walk through the genesis of engagement with the SEC pre-enforcement action, right?
Yep.
And let's catch people up to speed because people, you have to remember this was a point in time during the middle of the ICO boom. It was post-ICO boom by a year, right? This was 2020 that this enforcement.
The lawsuit was filed December 2020, 2 days before Christmas.
It was right before the changing of the guard of the Trump administration. But that means is there was basically 3 years post-ICO, which was a whole boom and bust cycle that existed years after Ripple had already began building with the XRP ledger, contributing to the ecosystem, however we want to frame it, right? But clearly you had been engaging for several years on this point as to how you should be regulated, what the rules of the road were, and how to think about these novel tokens. So just help people understand like what that lead up looked like.
All right, so first of all, if you go back in time, I think an important factoid that most people don't recognize is at the time we had our first meetings with the SEC, the market cap of XRP was greater than that of ETH. It was the second most valuable digital asset. And
I remember that because it was a straight shot down 90% the rest of the year. Not just for you, for everybody.
Part of the reason I'm making that point is I don't think any government agency should be in the business of picking winners and losers. And so, look, the first time I went and met with the SEC, I didn't go with any lawyers because it never even had crossed my mind that XRP might be a security. Like we were already regulated by FinCEN. We had a BIT license. Like we were a regulated entity. U.S. Treasury had called, the DOJ had called XRP a currency. It never had crossed my mind. And look, I went to Harvard Business School. I'm familiar with what, not the law necessarily said, but the idea of a security, of ownership of a company. Moreover, and I think an important relevant fact here is Ripple had raised a Series A traditional funding, a Series B, and by the way, congratulations to Messari on your funding today. So Ripple raised a Series A, a Series B, and a Series C. We did not do an ICO. And I think when people talk about like, okay, what is the SEC trying to prove or what have you, the facts of the Ripple case are very, very different than some of the other cases that the SEC has brought. Now, I do think the SEC has been a bit of a bully in the whole industry, right? We will spend, and I've publicly already shared this, well into the over $100 million defending ourselves against the SEC. And there's not a lot of projects that can actually afford, I mean, the companies that can afford to do that, it's not a long list. And so I do think it's not just important for Ripple, it's important for the industry that somebody kind of stand up to this and be like, look.
We'll get to the lawsuit in a minute, but let's talk about that pre-2020 period, because at the time, I remember when XRP was the second largest currency back in 2013. Or not 2013, but
yeah,
right after like 2014, 2015, that period of fallow after the first big spike, not even talking about the ICO boom. And even at the second largest, it was still kind of a blip on the radar for regulators, for the industry in general. But then somewhere in the 2017 time period, XRP started to be used by the Ripple protocol. I'm getting the name changes incorrect, but it started to get used as the bridge currency for this program, on-demand liquidity.
Right, so Ripple, the company, uses XRP in our technology stack and uses the XRP ledger to solve that cross-border problem. There really isn't a Ripple protocol, and I think when you say that, I think it's XRP.
Yes.
Okay.
So, but the currency itself really started to be used in a meaningful way in the beginning of 2017. And that coincided with some of the price run because the market cap ran up. It was being used as a functional asset for some of these like cross-border settlements for some of your financial institutions. Is that fair?
Not really. I
looked at the chart.
Well, I don't know, honestly, top of mind. I think I've shared publicly, so it's 2022. We're now doing, many billions of dollars of transactions through XRP. In 2017, I bet that number was 0. It just, I'm thinking back to 2017, like, I mean, seriously, Ryan, we were trying to sign customer one.
Yeah.
We had signed some customers, but these were test customers, right? There was no scaled use case. And so to the extent, we actually have done all kinds of research on, the various price activity of all crypto. And, as you know well, like a lot of it's just correlated with each other. And it's not that often you can actually point to events and say, okay, that drove that. At least I still struggle with that today as somebody who's followed this industry pretty closely for a while.
What is interesting, regardless of the precise timing, and I know you were signing customers during that time, they were using they were not using XRP as a currency for some of the early work that you were doing with them.
And that product still exists. Some of our customers,
exists. But then XRP was essentially floated as something that would be an optimization of some of those cross-border flows, and it would be, an incremental 50, 60%, whatever it was, efficiency gain, in terms of cost for cross-border settlement. That was the original packaging. My point is, it was packaged truly as a bridge currency, right? So a currency pair for illiquid other currencies that you might want to trade bilaterally between financial institutions.
Can I put a couple facts around that? So XRP, when the SEC sued us, XRP was traded on well over 200 exchanges around the world. 99.9% of all XRP trading had nothing to do with Ripple, the company. So it was just activity around the world, other projects, speculators, you name it. but it had nothing to do with Ripple. 99.9%. So around 10 basis points was what Ripple, the company, had direct involvement in.
I think a lot of people, in fairness, were looking to see what those big banks would do and whether they would truly leverage XRP. I remember thinking about it early on as an investment to front run the banks because they were going to take so long. That was why I originally started looking into it, ironically enough. But I do think it was positioned as like a speculative commodity, but it was never a security. It was never, to your point, it was never an ownership interest in the network. It was never an ownership interest in the company. There was a company that was very integrally involved in terms of driving some of these institutional customers, but even the demand that you all were driving was for a bridge currency as contemplated.
Yeah.
And I spent a little bit of time with your team talking about this, back then and even before 2017.
Well, the closest comparison in that era, I think, was a company you worked at. Consensus, the company, was building on top of the Ethereum ecosystem and owned Ethereum. And I think was relatively speaking, the most comparable consensus is to Ripple as ETH was to XRP. And that both companies were active in those ecosystems trying to drive adoption.
Well, I was only at consensus for like 8 weeks, so I'll let Joe fight that battle. But I think we agree on the substance of a bridge currency is not a security. And so the lead up and the discussions with the SEC, you didn't even bother going with your lawyers at first. You're having a frank conversation. You're doing the whole come in, talk to us, engage with us. You kind of got roped in to the honeypot. But did you get a sense post-ICO crash in some of your interactions with the SEC that things were starting to trend in the wrong direction? Or up until the day that things went sideways?
No, we had a sense. I mean, look, so I remember when I first met with the SEC, the SEC had set up this innovation group run by one of Val Sapanic, and she became kind of the crypto czar. And look, they were purportedly just, hey, we want to understand. We went in to kind of just educate them. Frankly, as I was going around the world, meeting with central bankers around the world, talking to them about here's how Ripple's solution works. Here's the kind of customers we're signing. Here's how we use XRP. Mm-hmm. We are one participant in the XRP ecosystem. And so the first meeting I had, Jay Clayton was there, and not once did anyone say to me in this meeting that, and by the way, again, no lawyers from Ripple were there. It was me and David Schwartz. And there's never even a suggestion that XRP was a security. And I thought it was a very constructive meeting just to talk about how Ripple was using XRP and how the whole kind of crypto landscape looked. Now, to your question, when did we get a sense that like the tone had shifted? About a year after that, we got a letter, and now lots of people have gotten these letters. In my judgment, the SEC has gone cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs and just blasting out these investigative letters. But the first letter we got was simply hey, we're looking into this, it's informal, we want your voluntary cooperation. And literally there's a sentence in there that says, we've made no determination about what we view XRP as, but we want to, blah, blah, blah. Now what's interesting about that is, that happened, and I think in 2019 we got that letter, and we're like, oh, okay, like more active engagement, we're happy to cooperate. Again, one of the ironies here, and I know you're pacing how we get into the lawsuit, but in that letter, it references there's been no determination made. Yet they sued us and me personally, suggesting that from 2013 to 2020, I should have known the whole time that XRP was a security. My attitude is like, I was in your office multiple times. Not once did someone tell me that they viewed XRP as a security. So it's a little bit, I think, and the judge involved in the case, and now I'm getting kind of in the deep end here just for a second. Just recently, the judge had a ruling about some discovery things, and she described the SEC, one, as being hypocritical, two, as not following a faithful allegiance to the law. That's a quote. This is a federal government agency that works for us, right? Like, it's part of the government. We should feel outrage. Like, the idea that now everything under Gary Gensler's view is a security is crazy talk. And I think it does go back to, I know I'm ranting for a minute, just give me one more second. Look, I think you have to go back to first principles.
I mean, you can rant as long as you want about Gary Gensler. My marketing team is relieved. I see I'm getting looks over there.
It's me, not him.
Not me.
Exactly, it's safe space. Look, I think we have to go back to first principles. the United States Securities and Exchange Commission is granted authority by legislation from Congress. The 1933 Securities Act describes a security as an investment contract. So everybody talks about the Howey test. If you read the recent summary judgment motion, the point we're making is there's no investment contract. You don't even get to the Howey test. Ripple, the company, and Brad Garlinghouse, the individual, I didn't enter into a contract with anyone who bought XRP. There's no investment contract. If there's not a contract, how do you even get to the Howey test? So look, I do think the SEC has kind of gone cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, and I do think in some positive way, it's catalyzing all of us to write to our legislatures, to donate to people we want to get elected, and I think the pendulum may swing in a little bit of a smackdown to the SEC.
I think that's what folks are hoping for. One question I want to pose, because you brought up consensus. You have had as part of your strategy, at times, unfavorable comparisons to Ethereum, right? Okay, if the SEC is giving us this guidance that we were a security issuer and we should have known for all this time, how do you explain the Hinman test? And
well, but the Hinman test, which, just so everyone's on the same page, Hinman gave a speech saying that decentralization was a measure of whether or not something is security.
Yes.
That's not what the law says.
That was a single speech of his, exactly.
That was just a Hinman opinion, I guess.
Yeah. Still, that was kind of perceived as Ethereum's getting away scot-free, even though they did this token sale. There was actual documentation. There was a white paper. They
did an ICO.
Right? And on the one hand, you said there shouldn't be so much tribalism. On the other, you have frequently contrasted Ripple, XRP, and the situation there with everything that happened between Ethereum, the asset, the Ethereum Foundation, and consensus.
Well, so let me be, I'm going to set the record straight.
There? Yeah.
I personally own Bitcoin. I personally own Ethereum. I personally own XRP. I am long all of those digital assets and some others. My comparison, I mean, my attitude is Bill Hinman, as the director of CorpFin, got in front of the world and gave a speech saying, we think ETH was a security, transitioned to a non-security because of a decentralization framework. I looked at that and I remember sending an email internally at Ripple. I was like, hey, this is good news. XRP, is a decentralized open source digital asset. Ripple, the company, only controls a very small percentage of the validators on the network. This is, again, the law doesn't actually say what Bill Hinman says, but if that's how the SEC is going to measure this, then that's good. So by drawing the contrast is simply, why would the SEC, why would a government entity, when XRP at the time that the SEC started their investigation was the second most valuable asset, why would they be picking winners and losers? It's just not the role of a government. Well, not a capitalistic, not a democracy government. There's other governments around the world that might be in that business, but.
And now, of course, apparently Ethereum is going back to not sufficiently decentralized because of the merge. If you
well, the cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs is kind of like, how in the world can they say, because it went from proof of work to proof of stake, now all of a sudden it went back to being a security?
Mm-hmm.
It
makes perfect sense to me. Yeah. The X's and O's of the lawsuit itself, you mentioned you've spent $100 million pushing this, more than that. I'm sure XRP sales helped fund that, so it's a public good at this point that the decentralized community has funded.
So let me be clear about that, because again, I think facts matter. Ripple only sells XRP to customers who are sending cross-border payments using our product on demand liquidity.
Fair enough. That will then get distributed in the ecosystem, and then many of the folks are not necessarily affiliated with Ripple, and they'll get traded on third-party exchanges.
And as we publicly disclose to everyone, the vast majority of the XRP we sell, we repurchase.
Yes.
And we're very transparent about that, and we have been from the beginning.
You were very early in the transparency reports. I will give you.
Which kind of backfired, because the more transparent we were, the more people.
Easier it was for guys like me to pick up on the disclosures. I get it. So, but the lawsuit itself, right? North of 9 figures, no one else is going to be able to fight this fight, basically, or very, very few teams are going to. How does this get resolved, right? Are you pot committed at this point to actually get a jury trial or some type of precedent-setting action, or is there a situation where you all would settle? Because I think everybody at this point is hoping that you
go the
down
distance.
with a fight, go the distance.
So I'll say up front, I'm not the lawyer, but I've learned, unfortunately, more than I'd ever want to know about this. I very much doubt there will be a jury trial. And the reason is juries are used to figure out what the facts are. In this case, the facts really aren't in dispute. Right? We agree, Ripple sold XRP. I personally received some of my compensation in XRP, and I sold XRP. Those facts aren't in dispute. What's not clear is the law. And so what the government is saying, what we're saying with these recent filings of a motion for summary judgment is, look, accept the facts as they are, just rule on the law. So by mid-November, we'll also comment briefly that the SEC has been trying to delay this thing every chance they have. We believe that by mid-November...
Because they want to pick off smaller fish first. Yeah.
Well, they're trying to set precedent. I mean, some of you following the library case, which is super interesting to follow, and I applaud the leaders there for some of their humorous tweets, which I never will click on I like because someone's watching everything I do, but I do sometimes like them.
I think you just outed yourself.
Anyway, they're trying to delay it. By mid-November, we should have the motion for summary judgment fully briefed in front of the judge. Then the question is, how long does the judge take to make a ruling? We don't know. You know, it could be as little as 2 months. It could be as little as much as 6 to 8, 9 months. But I think the full case will be in front of the judge, and I doubt that you would have the judge come back and say, no, there's a dispute on the facts, let's have a trial. I don't think there needs to be a trial, and both the government and Ripple are saying we don't need a trial, just here are the facts, you should rule. And again, the fact is the SEC has to first prove that there's an investment contract. Mm-hmm. If there's an investment contract, then you'd apply the Howey test. And I don't think they can get past the investment contract, but if you apply the Howey test, I think they're also going to fail because there's a lot of people who buy XRP who've never heard of Ripple, and that's okay. But to the idea that XRP is a security of Ripple, I just think is nonsense.
How should crypto be regulated in the U.S.?
Well, by the way, it is regulated in the U.S. Like,
under whose oversight should some of these assets sit?
I mean, there are a bunch of projects here in the room. I'm sure that, look, Ripple's regulated today by FinCEN, we have a BIT license in New York. I'm thinking of the U.S. regulators. Outside the U.S., we have a bunch of licenses depending on which country. But Gary Gensler has gone out there and tried to portray, and he uses the word, crypto is the Wild West. For those of us in the industry, it's like, I don't think it's the Wild West at all. I mean, is there volatility? Yes. But I think the vast, vast, vast majority of people in crypto want to follow the rules of the road. Mm-hmm. We need clear rules of the road. And for Gary Gensler, he's just added confusion to the system by his lawsuit going after the former Coinbase employee, saying that was insider trading of securities. But he's not going after Coinbase, where they were traded. He's going after the individual. I think because the individual doesn't have the money and resources that Coinbase would do to defend themselves. Like, this is just a shitty way for a government to actually regulate. I mean, keep in mind, the SEC, one of their mission statements is to protect investors. The day that they filed the lawsuit against Ripple, $15 billion was evaporated in the XRP ecosystem.
Well, I'm not going to take Chair Gensler's defense here, but if the mission of the SEC is to protect investors, promote fair and efficient markets, and capital formation, then they're 0 for 3, and that's not going to change until there's new leadership. So I think we're on the same page there. Brad, I'll give you the last word. You can use it however you want to. You can rant against me. You can get whatever you want off your chest. You can give a spiritual enlightenment talk to the folks in the audience.
I hear there's a dunk tank this afternoon.
There is. Eric.
The rumor is...
I've got to tell you, Brad, I was going to do the whole Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross thing, but I didn't quite think that brass balls were big enough for you coming on my stage. So I'm going to give you 2 shots at the apple.
At the dunk tank. I'll be there.
5:30, Brad Garlinghouse is going to be able to throw out the first 2 pitches.
It might be 5:45, just for the record, but yes, I will be there, and I'm looking forward to it.
5:45, the shot clock will be ticking, but we're going to give you the 2 shots at it, and I appreciate you coming on stage and appreciate you fighting the good fight, because I think this is important precedent-setting case. All of our mean tweets in the rearview mirror in terms of being on the same side of this one. So thank you again for coming.
I appreciate you having me, truly. I appreciate the invitation. I do think that these kinds of dialogues are super important to move the industry forward. And I'll just go back to my ask of everyone here, twofold. Let's all combat tribalism. It doesn't help anybody. 2, call your legislative elected official. Let them know that you care about these legislative efforts, both in the House and the Senate. We need more clarity. We can't let the SEC run roughshod over this industry in the United States. Thank you.
Brad Garlinghouse.
Thank you.
There we go. We got the picture.